As long as Tibbs understands that this should be a year where we should be focused on developing our core above all other things, developing the core roster. And if you don't know who the core roster is, I'll give you my opinions on who the core roster is. That would be Immanuel Quickley. That would be RJ Barrett. That would be, yes, Kevin Knox. That would be Obi Toppin. And also that would be Mitchell Robinson. And to me, that should be a competitive starting lineup. Hey, what's going on? Quis here from Sports Vibes TV. In this video, I want to give you not only my thoughts on the Cavaliers getting the brakes beat off them by the New York Knicks, but also my thoughts on the preseason as a whole. Now, this win that the Knicks took against the Cleveland Cavaliers is by far the most impressive win I've seen for the Knicks in some time. Now, Immanuel Quickley, luckily Tibbs is finally getting it. Immanuel Quickley was given the start at point guard, and a lot of the things I've been saying here on this channel was shown during the game. Immanuel Quickley just impacts the game in so many facets that you're seeing it rub off on the players around him. Kevin Knox probably had one of his best games in a long time. He was looking like a sharpshooter from three. And the fact that he was able to look so good is, I think, a byproduct of Immanuel Quickley being on the court. You're seeing, and I'm seeing in some of the film I'm reviewing, I'm working on a film study or a film session of that last game. I'm trying to get it to you before the actual start of the regular season. I'm seeing a lot of ball movement, and the ball movement is coming from Immanuel Quickley being on the court. It's just the fact that when the defense has to respect Immanuel Quickley's ability to shoot, it allows a lot of driving lanes and it creates a lot of opportunity for other Knicks on the court. And Kevin Knox, time and time again, was a benefactor of that. And even when Immanuel Quickley wasn't on the court with Kevin Knox was still able to build up that confidence and build up that rhythm while Quickley was on the floor, and he was able to carry it to moments when he wasn't. And you saw that a lot throughout the game for a multitude of players. Reggie Bullock was also able to knock down threes consistently. Immanuel Quickley was also able to find Mitchell Robinson a couple times, and Mitchell Robinson is still one of the most disruptive pieces the Knicks have on the court. And you pair his defensive contributions with Immanuel Quickley's contributions, and things really happen on the court for the New York Knicks. You're seeing the Knicks being active. You're seeing the Knicks running up and down the court. You're seeing the Knicks look in a manner that we haven't seen the New York Knicks look in a while. And as a fan, you can't be anything but ecstatic. The New York Knicks are slowly but surely building a core that I think is going to be attractive to anybody else around the league. Look at other teams that have tried to build in a similar manner, where they've brought in young pieces and then they've methodically brought in, whether that be free agents or whether that be trades, other talented players to pair with the core. Look at the Boston Celtics. They drafted a core of Marcus Smart, Brown, Jason Tatum, and they've worked to try to bring in free agents to try to piece around that core and make championship pushes. Look at the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have a lot of young players on that team as well, whether that be a Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and then they were able to bring in Butler via free agency. And you see what that team was able to do. And you've seen multiple instances across the league where that formula has been successful. And it looks like the Knicks are finally taking heed to what they're seeing around the league, and they're following a similar format, a similar structure. And with Tibbs finally getting it and giving these young guys some playing time, we're seeing that the Knicks' future is a lot brighter than some of the pundits might have been trying to say or might have tried to imply. Yes, the Knicks didn't make a lot of moves this offseason, but you can see from this preseason that we have a lot of in-house options available to us. And we don't necessarily have to rely on these veterans to make this team compatible. competitive. I would even argue that the team is more competitive when we're playing some of these younger guys, some of these young players. And the perfect example is that Cleveland Cavaliers game. Not even just the Cleveland Cavaliers game, but the Cleveland Cavaliers series in a whole. From that fourth quarter onward, the Knicks have been a dominant team. And yes, you can argue and say the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't necessarily the greatest collection of talent, but I would counter that argument and I would say the Cleveland Cavaliers, they still played, Drummond. He's an elite center in this league. They still played Colin Sexton, a player that they drafted with a high first round pick. They also played Darius Garland, another high first round pick. If I'm not mistaken, they picked him fourth or something like that, fourth or fifth, somewhere in that ballpark. So, yes, the Cavaliers were playing a bunch of other guys that we weren't necessarily familiar with. But up until the fourth quarter, those same collections of guys were holding a lead against the Knicks. So you can't turn around and say, the Knicks didn't necessarily beat the highest level of competition. Well, they were kicking our butts for the first three quarters in the third game, and we wiped the floor with them once we gave Immanuel Quickley the reins. So if this is what I'm seeing from preseason, as long as Tibbs understands that this should be a year where we should be focused on developing our core above all other things, developing the core roster. And if you don't know who the core roster is, I'll give you my opinions on who the core roster is. That would be Immanuel Quickley. That would be R.J. Barrett. That would be, yes, Kevin Knox. That would be Obi Toppin. And also that would be Mitchell Robinson. And to me, that should be a competitive starting lineup in Tibbs' eyes. That should be one option at starting lineup. And it should be pretty high up on the list. Because if you look at the plus minus, which I've mentioned a lot on this channel, if you look at the plus minus, our starters, for the most part, everybody had over 40, a plus 40 plus minus. And to me, that's crazy. That means they outscored the other team by 40 some odd points. The only players that didn't have plus minuses that high out of the starting lineup was Reggie Bullock. And even he had like plus 20. So if you want to swap Kevin Knox for Reggie Bullock in the starting lineup, then cool. I'll live with it and bring Knox off the bench. But if you're going to bring Knox off the bench, he better be getting a lot of playing time with Immanuel Quickley. My argument for Knox starting per se is the fact that I want him with Immanuel Quickley for as many minutes as possible. Let's get him started off right in the beginning of the game so that way he can carry that momentum throughout the remaining portion of the game. So that's where my mindset is when it comes to starting Kevin Knox. If you want to argue otherwise, that's cool. I won't argue against you because I know some people aren't necessarily sold on Knox. They think it was just a one-time thing because, yes, he's not going to have as good of a shooting performance as he did against the Cavaliers. That's for certain. He's not going to be as lights out. But if he has really worked on his jump shot and he's knocking it down consistently, I think he'd benefit the team as the starter. We know Reggie Bullock is not in our long-term futures. So we bring in Kevin Knox, and right there we have our core that we can market next offseason if we want to go and bring in a free agent, similar to how the Heat did it when they brought in Jimmy Butler. That could be an option, even though I think the free agent market with Giannis signing isn't as full as it used to be. There's not as much talent as we expected, but there are still some pieces out there that we can pick up and build out the roster a little bit more. One thing I noticed in the game, second unit still needs to be worked on. We don't have as deep of a roster as we would like, or as I would like, but we really haven't seen Austin Rivers. I think Austin Rivers could slot into that second unit and not necessarily be the primary facilitator, but at least Austin Rivers is a playmaker. He can make plays for himself, and hopefully in his attempt to make plays for himself, it'll open things up for players around him. So we still have that to look forward to. So the Knicks weren't necessarily fully healthy, and we were still firing at all cylinders, it seemed, in that fourth game. So that's even more positive news for the Knicks. The fact that we still have some more guns in the utility, and we still have some more guns that we can pull out and actually put on the court and see some more positive movement and some more progression for the team as a unit or as a whole offensively. Now, I want to know what you guys think about the preseason as a whole, not just the fourth game? What were some things that stuck out to you? Let me know down in the comments, all right? Once again, I'm Quis, host of Sports Vibes TV, and I'm out.
Stress.